the evening. I'm very delighted to welcome Ciaran. Not only is he one of the most passionate people I've ever met, he's intensely connected to philosophy. This space is about being able to talk about ideas. We should have fun with knowledge. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about ideas and worry about are they wrong? The philosophy is about that. So please welcome Ciaran to the second part of his fabulous philosophy and drink it. Cheers.
Today we're going to take a look at how strangely perspective of humanity opens up a radical new approach to the issue of human suffering. It's based on the idea that we have fundamentally misconceived the basic nature of the human mind to a degree that's essentially total. This idea centers around what I suppose you could call the hard absence of human cognition. We don't really think. What happens instead is that very convincing illusions are projected by the brain. Stories of thoughts that never actually happen, which are then fleshed out. Emotional quality, color, flavor, light, to produce the illusion of the human self. The idea is that the self is this very specific kind of illusion. Personally me, personally you. We are narrative illusion. This has always been happening. It's the basic nature of humanity. And moreover, it's an illusion that's evolved in a very specific way, for a very specific purpose. A good way to think, to get your hands on, when we're talking about human size display, is to think of a peacock's tail, just as the spine in the center of a peacock's feather holds up the colors of the feather itself. So to do human ideas, concepts, beliefs, rationality act as a structure lit up with emotion, quality, flavor. The unique flavor of each individual human to produce us, the illusion of us. This isn't something we do, it's something we are. We're going to display humanity. We are these displays, literally. This is a strange approach. But it raises a question mark over the basic existence of human rationality. It's not that rationality is bad, that it's incomplete, that it's cold logic. It's not that it needs a caveat, some theory about cognitive bias. It's that in a very real way, it literally doesn't exist. That's not what humans are doing. It's not what we are. Our ability to engage with situations is constrained by our comprehension. If our entire interaction with ourselves has been constrained by us being fooled by this face value appearance of reason, when what's actually there is something totally different. We have and continue to be severely constrained. Chief among these constraints is our ability to deal with pain, anxiety, anger, depression, despair. When these things come to us in our lives, they always appear very specific. They always come to us covered in reason. There's always this thing to blame, that thing to blame, this thing to fault, that thing to fault. It's always very hard and very cruel, but it's always rooted in a very specific context. Now, of course, when you start looking at things like depression, in its very extreme form, the issues can become very existential, very broad. But they're still there. There's proximate reasons. We respond to that context. We respond to the reasons. We argue with our pain. We reason with our anger. We analyze our anxiety, breaking it down, all the things that are causing it. And then we devise counter-arguments against it. These counter-arguments can get very intense, very deep, very complicated, very convoluted. And it never works. We argue with ourselves passionately, but no matter how good those arguments are, no matter how clever, no matter how forthright, no matter how insightful, we always end up just spinning our wheels. We never gain traction. And as we spin our wheels, we press harder on that accelerator pedal, we argue harder, argue, prove. Very easily, the solution to the problem becomes a much greater, truer problem. It's very easy to spiral out into extremes. Sometimes it doesn't last very long. It'll spike, explode. It might do damage to relationships at work, the lives of others. But after perhaps a good night's sleep, it can subside. Sometimes it doesn't. So we attack it hard. It just stokes like a fire. When we're talking about these amplified extremes, it's very important to see that, yes, from our point of view, when they happen to us, they look very convincing. We like to think they are. We like to think they're unique, especially when they happen to us. Yeah. Sure, of course, all this other stuff everyone else is doing is completely crazy, but when it happens to me, this time it is unique. This time it is special. This time, these are the real reasons. Look at how real they are. spiral down the hole and down. It can be extremely unpleasant. It's nightmarishly hard to pull yourself out. But it's important to notice that really what we're talking about is some form of fairly straightforward feedback process. Somehow our attempts to solve the problem make the problem worse. So we attempt to address it again, we double our effort, stoke the problem more. There is a simplicity. A simplicity that is difficult to spot from the inside. In certain situations, very powerful mood-altering prescription drugs can gain traction. I certainly wouldn't want to belittle the importance of those to some people. At specific times in their lives, they can be life-saving, but they can also be a life-sentence. Living in a reduced, pacified experience of being human. Never actually coming to grips with what's really going on. This new, strange perspective on human nature's display gives us a chance to get that. A clear, simple account of human suffering that opens up a clear, simple account of a potential solution. The key is seeing past the mere fact of the illusion of self. It's to contour what kind of display it is, what kind of illusion, what are its elements, in what way is it doing what it's doing. Understanding it as an evolved display, an evolutionary display, allows us to get a fix on its agenda. That the human self has specifically at its core the agenda of such a display. And with that agenda in mind, all the brilliant, coherent, unique, really convincing reasons why we're unhappy or afraid or angry, whatever. None of them are even remotely relevant to the real and secret purpose of that pain. To be seen, to be vivid. To light up a person suffering, to demonstrate how much we go through. To light up a person with fear, to demonstrate the depth of our concern. To light up a person with rage, to demonstrate how moral, because we hate something so much. From this perspective, all the differences between all the different kinds of amplified human suffering, all of a sudden they're just completely incidental, because we're not looking at 1,000 different problems. We're looking at one problem, 1,000 different expressions. The crazy thing is, from this point of view, extreme human pain isn't a problem at all. It's a faculty. From a face value way of looking at human rationality, where we just accept that, largely speaking, it is what it looks like it is. The only way we can comprehend really extreme human pain is as a malfunction. We spend a lot of time trying to fix ourselves. But the amplification of pain is a very highly developed faculty. It's extremely sophisticated. It works from one end to light up a person, to light up the display of human souls. Everything else is incidental, everything else, which is to say, the entire structure of all thought, reason, rationality, rationalization, everything that buttresses, enables, stokes, gives powerful context to these extreme feelings. It's just a very well evolved and well woven facade. Our negative emotions spike. And they spike, apparently, because of some specific situation. And we all experience when this happens. When we are angry, really angry, or anxious, or in a despairing state. We make that situation massively worse. The whole time, all through this experience, over and over, with a whole range of negative feelings, the emotion is dressed up as existing solely for the reason of this specific problem that needs to be addressed. And yet, the more intense the emotion, the more volatile, self-defeating, and clumsy our interactions with our actual problems become. Almost as if the emotion were itself the point of what's going on, and everything else was window dressing. Just there to frame. Of course, there's another way of looking, which is that we look for reasons as fodder to stoke and justify emotional display, quality, flavor, because that's what gives the display of self its compelling force. So what do we do? Well, I think the historical perspective is a useful one here. We live in interesting times, but we didn't evolve. We evolved in a different situation. We're calibrated to a tribal world. Tribes communally weave what I call a tapestry of belief that unites oral traditions, legends, folklore, myth. These things always are extremely rich and distinctive, fascinating. You can catch a sense of that really intense, fascinating depth and flavor when you look at something like the Aboriginal Dreamtime, the mythology and spirituality of other indigenous cultures. This tapestry of belief provides a stable, rich context against which our beliefs as individuals take on a special power and a deeper resonance. Our beliefs unite us with other members of the tribe. Those of us who live inside the same shared tapestry we have, for want of a better way of putting it, a common moral universe within which we can display virtue, worth. Within this way of being. And from the perspective of the human self as displayed, it is a way of being human. We are being human in a belief-based way. Because our beliefs take on primary importance in generating the power and connection of the display of human self. The first big tectonic shift that I think disrupted this was farming. Farming allows for food surplus. A food surplus and a consistent food surplus. You get static settlements that grow, cities, empires. All of a sudden, over tens of thousands of years, the mythological structure, the belief structure, this tapestry that once served as a backdrop for a few hundred people, now has to cope with the weight of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. A bustling world with trade routes, extra-cultural contact. Just having a wise man or a tribal tradition with shared storytellers, it's just not going to cut it. There's too much competition. Too much competition for display, pulling the tapestry apart. The more competition, the more the need for a stronger, more developed belief context. On the level of a civilization, we need a dedicated cast of people specifically tasked with entrenching, enforcing, embellishing this cultural tapestry. Priestly codes. So, our belief tapestries become heavier, thicker, more rigid, more entrenched, but also more ornate. More people are enforcing conformity, but also more people are embellishing along sanctioned lines. Ciaran, rich, the building of a world of symbolism in which we as humans can be with meaning. And then you get the printing press. It's just not possible to keep a hold on big ideas. Then you get the internet, and it's not possible to keep hold on anything. There's too many cats. And then the belief context, if you think of it as the ground beneath our feet, it stops shaking and cracking, it just liquefies in the information age. It's just too much more for any large-scale static belief system to persist. Why is this relevant to pain? Belief display is the basic nature of the human self. Us building these belief tapestries is evolutionary behavior. We just do it. That's what we were evolved to do, to weave the tapestry. We're also evolved to defend themselves. Because someone starts questioning the context that gives meaning and power to ourselves, it can be catastrophic to our personal display. So it can trigger a very nasty, very animalistic, very angry, destructive response. What if the tapestry fails and there is no display? When the belief tapestry fails, we fail. In simple terms, the human self has become compromised by the information age. We cannot produce reliable connections, interactions with each other through the way of being human that we have inherited from the past. As the power bleeds out, we default to emergency measures. We must be seen. We must be seen. We must be seen. The spikes in chronic depression, crippling anxiety that we see in technologically developed societies can be brought into a crystal clear focus, which from viewers can a host of other things. Terminal insecurity, the deep sense of unease, the rush to create idols of celebrities, very emergent behavior. It's coming from the ground up. It's not being imposed from the top down. It's pushing itself up. The febrile nature of our times and our culture, I think, is very revealing. We increasingly have to watch what we say. We've got a face full of rage. And of course, the need, most visible online, to turn every conversation into a fight, and every fight into a war of principles in which we can display the role of an indignant hero. Could it be that underlying all this mess is just some single process, some single thing that's spiking division between us all? It's creating these spirals and whirlpools of pain we keep getting sucked into as a desperate to shore up a failure of being human. If I'm right about human self being displayed, specifically involved social sexual display, then we might be able to devise another option, which will allow us, if this is true, to come up underneath amplified human pain and neutralize it before it even comes into being. First thing is that we have to admit what we can't. We cannot stabilize a belief-based human self unless we lock down the belief context of our lives. To do that on the scale of a planet, it's not just that such an attempt would be monstrous, because it would be monstrous. It would involve full machinery, global 1984 style Orwellian footprints. It's not just that, but yes, that is a big issue. It's that it's impossible. Logistically, it's just completely impossible. There are too many billion people. So we have to think differently. The power of the display of self comes from the color, the quality, the light that fills that structure. But the structure of beliefs is how we've always tapped that emotional power. In a reimagined the relationship between belief and colour, between concept and quality, between structure and flavour. I think we can do what we need to do, which is develop a new kind of human self. At heart, the shooting is simple because everything's simple if you get deep enough down. How it plays out, how we cultivate and develop as individuals, is something that, of necessity, will be extremely distinctive for each person. But the whole of this way is that instead of focusing on beliefs to give that power, force to our lives, we tap the power of human flavour directly, the unique flavour of our individual personality. A good way to get inside this new perspective is to think of the word excuse, instead of seeing the things we believe as providing reasons to express emotion. You take control. You think of it in terms of excuses. What does that mean? Well, to give you an example. Say if I were to say, I love my country, my nation, Britain, land of hope and glory. God save the Queen. Then you've got some big things, big ideas, love, a nation, hope, glory, God, the Queen. Because these are big ideas, belief-based self is drawn to them and uses as a support structure to support these big emotions, big emotional display, big display of human flavour, big ideas, supporting big flavour. Something we see very clearly in America. The information age swirls around these big ideas. It penetrates and erodes their credibility, like water penetrates and erodes cement. It's precious little magic to patriotism now, precious little reverence. So what do we do? Well, those unwilling or unable to reimagine their way of being and who are locked into that belief-based way, double down, become more extreme and shrill. They do this to gain the power to run in order to stand still. They need to double down to generate what's been lost. It's like a drowning man trying to keep his head above water and just tiring themselves out of their struggle. It's just not a viable future. And those who choose it are unwilling, not happy to reconsider what's the basic nature of what's going on. Or those who default into it for lack of another option. Well, set themselves on a collision course with reality. And reality is absolutely merciless. It doesn't care why we believe what we believe. The cliff face doesn't care why we have our eyes closed when we step over the edge. No matter how magical, spiritual, or rational we believe our reasons to be. So instead of doubling down on flavor belief, to generate the same level of flavor, color, vibrance, why don't we consider something else? Why don't we consider uncoupling the two? So instead of looking for reasons to express flavor and quality in life, look for excuses. Excuses just to express flavor. Excuses to express quality. Excuses to express life. Small ideas, big flavor. What with that? Well, I've already mentioned God and the Queen. I suppose I could tell you about my selection of teaching. I have an absolutely appalling selection of teaching. They are a crime against fashion. I have a red one, like about 85% of my t-shirts. It's from a time before I had this belly. So if I wear it now, it clings to my skin, and I look like I'm sporting the spandex costume of an over-the-hill pro wrestler. I have a black one. It says animal on the front. It has an anarchist sign on the back. It's not in any sense intimidating. I look like a 13-year-old emo pretending to be Gandalf. I can't tell you why though. I love that top. I think I'm being ironic. I don't know, honestly, I just say. I have another t-shirt, it's also black. It has a picture of David Hasselhoff's face. And in cheery letters, it reads, "Don't hassle the Hoff." Now, you think I like that? Honestly, actually, I did appreciate it when I got it, but when you actually have a picture of David Hasselhoff's face on the front of your body, it gets a lot of comments throughout the day. And after a whole day of wearing it, I feel, honestly, I look in the mirror and I just think of all the people throughout history I could be raising awareness of. I spent the day raising awareness of David Hasselhoff. Now, those t-shirts against God and the Queen, well, I certainly felt like I was on much stronger ground. Well, what I'm doing is very simple, very specific. It's not that I'm using big ideas to support flavor. It's that the flavor comes first. You invert the relationship between flavor and content. The expression of quality, feeling, life, that takes center stage. Each idea, each t-shirt is like, a slightly small red one, black one, animal, anarchist, and then the David Hasselhoff joke t-shirt. Each one becomes just like an excuse, just like a hook. You can just spin up into a riff, just express, just genuinely express. It doesn't matter if I like it, if I don't like it. What's relevant is that it's just a genuine expression of human flavor. And that's what the power is. The power to connect, the power to cut through boundaries. Let's just go through a few things about how belief-based and flavor-based cells stack up against each other. First, commonality. When you're dealing with belief, you try to connect with someone based on a set of facts and things they believe, specific, static ideas that you have in common. Well, it's a total crapshoot. And the likelihood of being able to find someone who has these same beliefs as you is very low. Even if you do, you've created a belief-based bond in the information age. which just swirls around it, making it fraught and anxious and weak. When dealing with flavor, commonality is guaranteed because we all have the same emotional range. We all have the same range of quality, flavor, the same spectrum. Any genuine expression of emotion, quality, and flavor guarantees immediate commonality. It's interesting to counterpoint this with uniqueness, because when dealing with belief, uniqueness is a known. There's very little new under the sun. When dealing with flavor, the individual, unique human flavor of your self-expression, the uniqueness is just guaranteed. Again, it's hardwired, because although we have the same emotional range, any actual expression of emotional tone is unique to the individual. It's a little bit like fingerprints, but we all have individual, distinct, and unique fingerprints, but we all have fingerprints. So you've got total universality and total uniqueness, and they both exist totally together. It's 100% of one, 100% of the other at the same time. Another element is compelling force. Now, dealing with belief, compelling force is a deal with the devil, because in a world stripped of reverence, your own real play is to move to extremes. When dealing with flavor, compelling force is guaranteed, because, again, your expression is genuine. Well, the emotional quality, flavor that's being expressed is and always has been the part of the display of self which actually generates the compelling force aim. Another thing would be stability. It's a critical issue. When dealing with belief in these times, stability is just a joke. I mean, as a display of self, we need to be vivid, or at least just have the option to be able to do that. Now, to do that, to have the option to distinguish yourself within a set structure of beliefs in a world of billions that moves this fast, while attempting to compete with all the other people for the most striking, distinctive beliefs, we rapidly descend into farce or carnage, and sometimes both. With flavor, stability is guaranteed because the flavor of humanity is hardwired evolutionarily and cannot be shaken. In a belief-based way of being, we have set values. We have a set outcome for a conversation, interaction. We want people to agree with the things we agree with. And so when we talk to someone, there's a good response and a bad response. If we say something, someone disagrees with us, it's like, oh, you say something and someone agrees, and that's great. But what that does is it's a way of being that puts pressure on an encounter. If someone does it to us, we get that feeling of being manipulated, boxed in, being a means to an end, not a human being. It's especially pronounced when talking to, I don't know, when listening to politicians or salespeople or someone who's trying to chat you up badly. When the beliefs are set, there's a totally new dynamic that can be developed. Instead of looking for a good outcome, a bad outcome, everyone's just free to respond in any way they want. There's just a human outcome. And so it's not anyone's free to express anything. But then what happens then is we're free to express back and bounce off each other, build the banter, build the life, the mood, the interaction. And then the crazy thing is that all these big divisive issues we hold on to. When we get that electricity between us, we can move the entire relationship, even if a very brief relationship, it's just a conversation, you move the whole tone of the conversation into a place where considering big, divisive, scary beliefs, new perspectives, this sort of thing, normally things that we would be terrified to consider, or angry to consider, it just isn't that big a deal because we're doing it among friends. What I'm trying to do is to open up the core mechanics of this, to sketch it out for you a little bit, so that anyone who wants to can experiment with this for themselves, and develop it in their own way. Here's a bit of a disclaimer. This is not binary. When I say develop, I really do mean develop. It's not like a light switch you flip. It's not a magic key. Also, it's not an equation. It's not the solution to an equation where you just need to understand it and then it immediately works. That's not what this is. What it is instead is a potential way of being that can be developed. Very calm, very rich, very stable, pretty fluid. If you try to use it or any part of it as a mantra or a belief system, it's just going to spin out, lack power, like every other belief system we have in this time. So instead of that, we use it to cultivate a new, vastly more powerful way of being human. Instead of belief-based humanity, it's flavor-based humanity. A new avenue, a new option to what's possible. And it comes up underneath the core issues that amplify conflict, damage, pain, anxiety, depression, emotional suffering of all kinds, which is the fatal power of the human display of self. It works way deeper than any difference between people, cultures, genders, race, age, because it depends only for its efficacy on the basic shape of humanity itself. Does this represent a new kind of humanity? I believe yes. The way in which we express ourselves is the way in which we are, because humanity is expression. The art such stuff as dreams made of. On a final note, the other thing this does is it frees up our large-scale beliefs. When we lean on belief to give power to the human self, we warp belief. This is especially prominent, damaging in very large-scale beliefs. In belief-based humanity, they're not there to be accurate. That's not their role. They're there to frame our lives, frame ourselves within a specific kind of picture where what we do takes on meaning and power. If we don't need that, if we don't need that highly charged frame, if we don't rely on it desperately, we can bring massively more nuance to our understanding of the very large. We live lives of subtle, the large vision, and coupled with the potential to develop potent expressive force. You can imagine you in different kinds of change work with stability, passion, pressure over time to make those changes real. But then, something for the next lecture. I'm sure I've bored you all quite enough. Are there any questions?
Last question.
I'll read it. I get that. No, you're okay. You're okay.
So, this is very interesting. How you're trying to shift perception, and of course, it's always interesting having your perception shifted. And
Interesting.
Discovering something that I don't know what it looks like. How do I know what it looks like? So, as a couple of exercises that I can take away over the next week, that I can apply in practice in my life to help me get into what you're saying, to really grapple with what you're suggesting. What would you suggest?
Okay. The first thing is that this is something that really, it's something we can develop just when talking to anyone. And I'm sorry, just something's buzzing in my pocket. It's really just go away. This is something that you develop in engaging with other people. Something that Bruce Lee said about martial arts is that you can work and practice in like the daily life, just whenever you're like standing at a bus stop, it's tense your muscles to do that sort of thing. It's kind of like that, but much more engaged. I think one of the easiest ways to go with an exercise would be to do something like think about what kind of options you would have in this that you would not normally have. A very good one that actually I used during the talk, was that when we're talking about kind of belief-based structure, kind of structure of hierarchy of meaning and solidity, we have to exist somewhere in this structure. And what this means is that you find people are like terrified of being diminished by having their position questioned. With this flavor-based humanity, what it does is it just allows you to play off. So what you can do is demonstrate quite a potent demonstration, I think, of power and worth is to purposefully undercut yourself, is to mark and ridicule. He just came in left. Is to sort of mark and ridicule what you're doing. I'd say, in terms of an exercise, a good one would be just pick a list of maybe 5 things, like shopping list, or I chose t-shirts, whatever. The more mundane, the better. Because it's kind of like developing a kind of muscle, in a way. You're developing the capacity to inject just interesting life and flavor into anything that's just really mundane. So whatever, like the more mundane, the better, because that gives you a purer, clearer view on it. He asked the question and ran away, so fill him in after. But for the rest of you, that's one. When you're just talking to people in the pub or in the bar, I think one of the best don't really think in terms of exercise, I think in terms of like perspectives. Like, a good perspective is what happens if your ability to connect with other people was just a given. Like, if the absolute success of any interaction was just there, like it was just done, like it was a done deal. If that was done and took all the pressure off, how would you like that interaction to be?
Sorry, David.
How would you like that interaction to be? Well, if you're not trying to get anything out of it, just fun, lively, silly, maybe a little bit, potentially a bit serious if you want to go there, but not, but just having that spark, that light. It's about putting yourself in that headspace. But yeah, I think in terms of how to develop and how to start, really just picking a list of very mundane items and trying to use them, even on your own. Sit down with a pen and paper or a keyboard, these computers the kids are using, and use that and just list just some random stuff, like what is around your room, anything. The more mundane, the better. You don't want to be picking exciting things to be exciting about. You want to cultivate your ability to make the unexciting riveting. And if you do that, you don't need big ideas to do it. I guess that would be a recommendation. Have I actually talked you all into science?
Well, you said it earlier about conversational spaces, and you can say anything without fear of belief, disjunct.
Yeah.
That really reminded me of close friendships I've had.
Yeah.
It's very much, friendships where beliefs are not necessarily had, but we don't say anything we left, this kind of stuff. So would you say they are effectively pockets of where?
Yes, 10 out of 10. Yes, I exactly would say that. Just for the benefit of the tape, if that wasn't picked up, what he just said was that the talking about this non-judgmental kind of space where we're free to express is how we experience our close friendships. And it is. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And these are pockets of this thing. We move well beyond the stage where we're trying to sort of connect over beliefs, and we just exist with people and laugh and joke and bounce things off and explore each other, explore the world, and explore and create an interaction between us, And it's like we're all contributing, we're all bouncing in and bouncing out, and there's, it just exists for the sake of itself. But yes, that's exactly, that's exactly. If that helps you get a fix on it, yeah. Sure.
Earlier on, what you were saying, I thought that you were talking about the ego as opposed to the true self, but as you carried on, I'm wondering whether that was the case.
Yeah, what you're talking about is basically the idea of the sort of like the ego structure, and then the sort of true, deeper, underlying self is something from, well, I mean, I would understand it to be something from Advaita, Buddhism, that sort of thing, Ramana Maharshi, that sort of thing. That's what you're talking about, am I right?
I wasn't particularly talking about Buddhism.
Well, okay, I mean, I would say that what this is it operates at a similar kind of depth to the mechanics of what's referred to as enlightenment, but it works in a different way. Whereas a very good way to just a quick shortcut to get your head around the difference would be that with enlightenment, it's about identifying the stillness. Whereas with this, it's about cultivating an identification with color, which is different. And because we're talking about these kind of like primary elements of the human experience, it plays out in a very different way. The most important is, and we weren't specifically referencing Buddhism, but I used the excuse to talk about when we try to use sort of stillness and meditation to dampen, disengage, or even potentially annihilate human suffering, there's an antagonism inherent between the stillness and the noise. And within the kind of understanding of the egoic self, what's understood as the ego, Eckhart Tolle writes brilliantly about this. If you're interested, he just cleans it right up. It's very easy to understand. But instead of looking at the ego as something inherently dysfunctional that cannot be salvaged, if you look at it in those terms, then really either annihilating the ego or finding a way to undermine or simplify the structure or whatever is your only play. What we have here is a way to shift and flip the primary elements of the human ego to basically create a new kind of ego that's much more fluid, in which the structural elements just are primary and have. It's not that they're absent, it's that they just have total redundancy, if that makes sense. That there's a redundancy to all the things we believe, which just simply means that we're completely free to reconsider anything that we believe because we're not attached to it. It's not us. We are something else. So I hope that was a little bit spooky, but that makes some little sense. Any other questions? Any other? Because I'm going to pull the ripcord on this and get drunk. I will do it. All right, you're done. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ciaran. A big thank you to Dan for
And can I just say, can you please give Alex a round of applause, please?
The room's made by everyone. I like what you were saying about friendship, and for me that word creates the most dynamic spaces, and that's why I like the informal. Just a heads up. The next event is on the 12th of August, I think. It's at the Central Library on the mezzanine. There are two very interesting folk coming all the way up from Oxford. If anybody's familiar with Ruskin College, one was a teacher, one was a pupil. So that's in August. In September, Ciaran will be giving part 3 of his philosophy on the 11th. And meantime, if you're around and you like live music, I have teamed up with this gentleman, Derek, and Edinburgh Fringe Live and Ragged University are putting lots of local bands on the stage just in the period. There's incredible talent there, and you can come along, you can see the music, you can enjoy it, and hopefully enjoy the sunshine. Check out edinburghfringelive.co.uk, and there's 26 bands. Meantime, please help finish off the food, take away. We don't want any waste. Thanks all for coming, for making the room, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thanks once again to Ellen and Ciaran and yourself.